Welcome, everyone. We're excited to welcome you back again to our medical school grand rounds. We've started this in order to engage all of our components of our school and components of UAB medicine on critical topics that we face in our daily lives as caregivers, as staff members, and as supporters, as well as physicians, to take care of the patients we serve for our state, the city, and the Southeast region. We're excited about the individuals who are on camera today, and even more excited about the topic that will be brought to us. We've never experienced anything quite like what we've had over the last 2 years, even though this topic has been around way before the pandemic. But like many things, the pandemic has brought this issue to front and center of how we live our lives. And so we're excited to have Dr. Sutton, who is really green and gold all the way through. She's a big fan, but also a alumni of UAB. And then I think many of us, if not a lot, certainly on our leadership and our faculty and staff, have experienced the work of our Chief Leadership Officer and Learning Officer, Jean Ann Larson, and as well as Associate Dean in those same spaces, Senior Associate Dean in those same spaces. So Jean Ann, I'll let you take it over, again, adding to the things that you've brought to us to help us deal with how we live and learn and lead in this current environment.
Great. Thank you so much, Dean Vickers, for the introduction. I'm excited to be here today and to be part of the School of Medicine Grand Rounds. We're all definitely in for a treat when we hear from Dr. Sutton. I became aware of her work through the Momentum program, which both of us have participated in. And I am certain, because of her work in that space, that she has a lot of information, knowledge, and practical ideas to bring to us around that particular topic. And before I turn it over to her, I want to tell you a little bit about her. She's got, to use a technical term, a really cool background. So I want to share some of that with you. She's a performance strategist, a team builder, an innovation leader, and she's based here in Birmingham. As Dean Vickers said, she is a UAB alum as well, which is exciting. And in addition to being the lead experiential strategist and planner at SHIPT, she also conducts leading edge research projects that result in innovative products and services, both for national brands as well as startups. Her pursuit of human understanding, both its strengths and of course the vulnerability, helps her design and create impactful physical, behavioral, and design experiences aimed at shaping positive behaviors and solving tough problems. Back in my day, we used to call that literally human factors design, really creating spaces where people could be their best and do their best. She also specializes in team formation and performance, and she's focused on how to get new teams as well as mature teams producing faster and more consistently at their highest levels. She regularly speaks to new findings in her research, latest trends, performance strategy, and psychological topics that will help people lead more fulfilling lives. And that's part of what she's going to be doing with us today, which is exciting. So whether she's talking to a multinational corporation or a small local nonprofit, a business, us, for example, her mission is always to improve people's lives and help individuals and teams perform at their highest levels. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sutton to talk to us about work-life integration. Dr. Sutton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here. Go Blazers. I'm so happy to be back with the green and gold here. This is such a humbling experience for me. So I just want to say thank you so much. Time is one of the most valuable, non-renewable resources we have. And thank you for spending your time with me. I'm going to get into it. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to jump in. So as you know, the topic of this conversation is the myth of work-life balance. That's right. It's a myth. We've been sold a myth. And I'm here to offer you an opportunity, a new perspective, a new mindset, as well as a new tool to maybe think through then, what is the alternative? What could the alternative look like? So the goals today, we're going to dispel the myth. right? I know we have scientists in the room. We have, as Dr. Vickers was saying, we have caretakers, we have support, we have admin, we have a bunch of roles. And at the core of this, across all of the roles and responsibilities we have every day, we're human. And I want to bring back that humanity. We heard the human factors. It's still human factors for me, right? Designing these experiences and services and products and all of this are about the humans I serve. So I want to dispel the myth that we have a work life and we have our home life, right? And I'm going to show you a little bit of my life and how this shows up for me. So I'm going to shift your approach, and I absolutely want to support change. Change is a huge deal for me as someone who engages in behavior change. This is important that we show up for ourselves as well. You heard a little bit about my background. Again, it really is all about change, because for me, if you're not changing it, you're choosing it. I'm going to wait. I'm going to say it again. If you're not changing it, you're choosing it. And when I'm engaging with corporations, with startups, with universities, right? So when I see behavior change, I know under behavior, there's feelings, and under feelings, there's needs. There's needs. You have needs. You have needs that show up across the spectrum. And that's really what we're going to break apart. We're going to dispel that you have this bifurcation. You have work over here and you have life over here. But in order to do that, right? In order to do that, I want you to give yourself permission to show up today. Look, take the watches off, right? Put your phones down. You can actually, I know some of you might not know this, but you can quit Slack. Not just minimize it, you can quit your email, right? And I'm asking you to do that. Give yourself permission to lean into you a little bit today, to prioritize yourself for this hour. I want to be able to pour into you, but I also beg you to give yourself permission to do so. I know some of you are like, I don't remember what that feels like. And I'm saying, please just try to minimize your distractions and be present with me now. I would almost one up that when we say time is that non-renewable, that most important, that most valuable thing we have, I would actually say it's probably attention now. Being able to be present in the time we give people. So I'm asking you to try that for yourself for the next 30 to 45 minutes. Right? So, because if we're not changing it, we're choosing it. Remember. So here's the deal. When I work with all of these organizations, when I work with startups, when I work with nonprofits, and now my current love story was shipped. I'm in my dream job. I love it. And I love the company and I love the people I work with. And one of the things I impress upon them as I am an experiential designer for them is like, hey, we have leaders across the board and I work with leaders. Also, I believe that there are leaders at every level, but I need leaders who have worked on themselves before they work on everything that's happening in the world. Right? So when I'm engaged in research, I need to know the bias and prejudice in the room, that bleeds into our research, that bleeds into our interpretations and our insight and our observations. I need us to know where those edges are. And I need to know that that's been minimized when we're serving others, when we're caring for others. So I'm asking you again, give yourself permission to work on yourself as a leader at UAB, right? As a leader at UAB. And you're like, well, I'm not a leader. I'm not a leader. That's not me. Look, anyone who sees potential in the processes or people around them and chooses to develop them and chooses to cultivate them is a leader in my eyes. So there's a really good chance you're a leader. So let's just make that assumption. You're a leader. You're a leader today. But let's talk about what it means when we talk about myth of work-life balance. I already told you it's junk. We have a schema. We've been sold a schema that no longer serves us. And if the past 18 months to 2 years hasn't convinced you of that, I'm not sure what will, right? We have seen a blending of boundaries unlike we've ever seen before. That work life and home life have been blurred. You're in my home right now as I work, right? If it absolutely is the case that this myth that these two things exist in separate realms, it's done, right? So I want to talk us through that today and how you can replace that schema, that idea, that assumption with something else. So I bring up Chip Conley here. I love this, right? Because we've talked about these two realms. Traditionally, this is what we have known, that there's a work life and there's a home life. But at the core of all of it, we're the same person who shows up to both. We have needs in both of these spaces because that's actually what cross cuts them. So I want you to hear about Chip. This was an amazing TED Talk. A little bit of context. He has been very successful in the hotel space. And he said he was successful because he focused on the emotional connections between his coworkers and colleagues and the connection he had with others, right? That humanity piece, the humanity piece. So I want you to listen in.
I ended up in the self-help section very quickly. And that's where I got reacquainted with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I took one psychology class in college and I learned about this guy, Abraham Maslow, as many of us are familiar with his hierarchy of needs. But as I sat there for 4 hours, the full afternoon, reading Maslow, I actually recognized something that is true of most leaders. And one of the simplest facts in business is something that we often neglect. And that is that we're all human. And each of us, no matter what our role is in business, actually has some hierarchy of needs in the workplace. So as I started reading more Maslow, what I actually started to realize is that actually Maslow later in his life wanted to take this hierarchy for the individual and apply it to the collective, to organizations, and specifically to business. But unfortunately, he died prematurely in 1970. And so he wasn't really able to live that dream completely. So I realized in that dot-com crash that my role in life was to channel Abe Maslow. And that's what I did a few years ago when I actually took that 5-level hierarchy of needs pyramid and turned it into what I call the transformation pyramid, which is survival, success, and transformation. It's not just fundamental in business, it's fundamental in life.
Right. So what he's telling us is these needs that we discovered many moons ago, he's applied them in this space, right? They are applicable in both of our lives. So there is this cross-cutting desire for fulfillment in both of these spaces. And that's what we want to talk about today. So I want to talk to you about those two things, right? Because we have social media. Social media allows us to be whoever we want and provide whatever mask we want, right? But this is what most people see. Right? When I show up to work, this is what we see. But this is also my real life. That was my office at the start of all of this when we went to work from home because I actually didn't have an office. I didn't want to work at home. I wasn't set up to work at home. And that's my backyard. You know, we've had torrential rain here. I've had projects that are sitting, in a stalemate because I can't get outside. And I have 2 cats who absolutely will not let me have any personal space whatsoever. And you might hear 1 or 2 occasionally during this. But this is real life. This is my real life. And this is me in real life with dishes in my sink, with plates on my counters, with, I'm sure, crumbs on the floor, right? As I am trying to make memories with my family, I'm trying to, and the myth tells us we have to choose. And there's a lot of times we feel guilty when we're not making these memories at home. We feel shame when we want to be successful at work and we know how hard it takes and how much we have to put into that. What is the sacrifice, right? Where is the fulfillment coming from? But this is me in real life. This is me going first and being vulnerable for you. Because I'm going to expose to you what my blend is. And we're going to get to what that blend is. And I'm sure some of you have done it prior to this, but we're not talking about happiness here, right? Happiness is short-lived. What we're really getting at when we say, I don't want to be a different person at work than I am at home. I want to be me. I want to show up authentically, wholeheartedly. I want to show up with vulnerability. And that is what I'm doing now. We know who the queen of vulnerability is. Y'all know, right? So I want to show you this little clip because this is what she's talking about here is something that is fueling that myth, right? It's some of the core assumptions that support that myth. So let's listen in.
One of the things that I have really noticed over the last 18 months is how profound this cultural message of fun, fast, and easy has invaded every aspect of our lives. I spent the first 6 years of my work studying shame, that feeling that makes us feel less than and not enough. And we all know it. And one of the things that has become increasingly disturbing to me is that I see kids, I see college age students feeling small because things are not easy for them. And the message is not only should you be able to do it and do it well, it should be a breeze. And so I wanted to put this in my house because I believe in kind of the old school wisdom of hard work and that we can do hard things. The other reason I love this sign is because as a researcher, my question that I've asked over the last decade has simply been this. We live in a culture of scarcity, a culture of never enough, never good enough, wealthy enough, rich enough, never not enough time. I've got a good friend, Lynn Twist, who wrote a book called The Soul of Money. And she writes in this book, every morning we wake up and the first thing we say before our feet hit the floor is, I didn't get enough sleep. And at night we crawl into bed and the last thing we say before our head hits the pillow is, I didn't get enough done.
Please drop it's me, a yes, anything in the chat if this resonated with you. If you literally did, if you feel comfortable, if you did this last night, man, I'm tired. Or if you did this morning, wow, like I just did not, man, I didn't get enough sleep. I'm not there. If you are perpetuating in your own head, you're not enough. We're going to talk about how we get past that feeling. I mean, the chat, I can see the chat literally blowing up. Thank you, right? Because we all are experiencing it. Thank you for being vulnerable, for admitting, yes, I feel like I'm not enough. I am pulled in so many directions, trying so hard to go and be everything and be perfect and do it so well. And I'm tired, right? I'm sure some of you are tired, and I'm sure you're having a little bit of anxiety right now, just prioritizing this hour to be here now. And I'm saying thank you, because I think you're going to get something out of this. Okay. This is really it. What she was talking about is this unattainable standard of this work-life balance, that we have to choose work or life. So the deal is, right, we've got to assume, you're like, well, I don't really know how we can get away from that. I'm not entirely sure how we, what's the answer then if it's not work and life? That's what we're here for, right? We've been taught we have to choose, that it is work or life. This puts them intrinsically against each other. If I'm pursuing work, life suffers. If I'm trying to show up as a partner, a mother, whatever your roles are, whatever hats you wear, a friend, a sister, an aunt, then work suffers. And I'm just constantly in the middle, and I'm never enough. This is the old schema. This is what we want to undo. We want to get back then to fulfillment. And I want to present this idea to you, that there is something else that can replace that old myth. So fulfillment, a feeling of satisfaction or contentment one experiences when they've achieved your desires and your needs and your expectations, right? Fulfillment. But I think, hey, let me unpack that a little bit. Let me dig down. You're like, hey, I have to achieve my desires, needs, and expectations. What are those? When's the last time I've asked myself what those are? That's what we're doing today. I'm asking you to prioritize yourself to figure out what it is that fulfills you. And that is the concept of this blend. And I couldn't be here today, honestly, without the work of Julie McDonald with McDonald Graham and Lisa Graham and Julie McDonald, because they have absolutely helped me. They've helped other people at UAB with this. So I'm thankful to them for this, but I want to present this concept of a blend, because that is what we are replacing, this bifurcated work or life, right? Why should we care? Let's talk about it. You're like, why does this matter? How is this helping me? Are you actually wasting my time? No, I'm not, because this does matter. And how you show up as a leader, as a partner, as a mother, people know when you're miserable. People know when you're at your tank's at 50%. And I'm saying, do the work on you to figure out what it is that is in your blend. Let's talk about you. Why I'm saying figure out your blend. I have been working on my blend. So I want to put that out there. A part of being vulnerable with you is saying, I'm doing this too. I'm on this journey with you, right? And these are the benefits I've seen. This is not just science as well, right? We've done the research on these things. When you are showing up more holistically, more wholeheartedly, more authentically, better self-control. You're cognitively in your lane and going. You are in gear to make better decisions, to have the energy you need to show up. Right now, what about your teams? You have a healthy presence. We know when the people around us are off their game. And we know it when it's consistent over time, right? Your ability to support others is affected. Once we have our blend in check, we can notice when other people's blends are not in check. Think about that, right? Because now we have the nouns and verbs to say, hey, you definitely have some gaps, your blend. We need to talk about your blend. Like what are you working on? Because I want to support you. So you're actually going to walk away today with some nouns and verbs and some conversation starters with people in your life that matter to you, your teams, your partners, your families, right? Better performance comes when we are able to have self-control, problem solve faster, when we're making good decisions. So why care? These are your reasons. These are your reasons to prioritize this today. So let's talk about your blend. In order to do this, I am going to show you my blend. I told you I'm on this journey with you. This blend sits on my refrigerator. And you're like, ooh, well, I need to know. I want the check. I'm asking me where my gaps are and what I'm doing about it, because if I'm not changing it, I'm choosing it. But also with this, I knew where to focus my attention, because where my attention goes, my energy will flow, right? Our attention is super valuable, and we're trying to do it all. And we're trying to be perfect. And this blend allows us to move away from that. And I'm going to show you how. All right, so here's some elements of a blend, right? You can choose the things that matter to you. Maybe fun, an effective team, progression at work, your partner, exercise. You had a whole laundry list of things you could choose, because your blend is unique to you. And there's no right or wrong blend. But what's really interesting, when you looked at all these examples, I didn't color code them to say, these are your work blend elements, these are your life blend elements. Right? Because one of mine, as you'll see, is intellectual stimulation. I get intellectual stimulation both at work and at home. This is something that is important to me for fulfillment, not work life, home life. I want us to move away from that. This is you taking back the mask, taking off the mask, getting raw and saying, what do I need to feel fulfilled? To feel satisfied. Okay. So let's keep going, right? And I'm going to show you mine. So here is my actual life elements blend. These are the things that are on my blend. Okay. Feeling inspired actually was one that I just updated during this pandemic, because I realized the connections and interactions I had prior offered me just unpredictable and uncertain inspiration. The stories from people, running into people, trying new things inspired me. And I lost that. I was able to label it probably about 8 months ago. And why I was just feeling so disconnected from myself. So feeling inspired is one of the ones that has actually changed on my blend in the last year. But there's the intellectual stimulation I was talking about, time alone. We know time alone is not an issue. Autonomy, feeling appreciated, weightlifting, sleep. So I can run through all these. So the goal then is, now that I've identified my 8 elements, I know what you're thinking. I'm going to stop you. Why 8? Why 8? Because this literal research shows us that these 8 things are going to make up about 80 to 85% of your fulfillment. And you've got a small bucket, a small impact, a small group of things that are low impact, that can be influential, but this is the majority. And these things are how you show up as the best version of yourself. I mean, close your eyes and imagine what that person looks like. Who is the best version of yourself? What are all of these things? If all of this was fulfilled, all of these needs were met, imagine that person, right? Imagine who that person is. But look, this is, we've experienced some challenging times. So let's get real about where we actually are on this. So the goal then is for us to determine where we currently are on that rating scale. 1 is super low, 10 being high, right? So my feeling inspired, I just told you why I'm feeling a bit disconnected. I'm ramping back up to it, but intellectual stimulation, I feel really good about. Time alone, I have more than what I need. Autonomy, feeling appreciated. These are really big deals. Feeling appreciated, think about that. It isn't work or life. I need to feel appreciated at work as much as I need to feel appreciated at home. It's one of the core things that fills me up and helps me feel connected to the people in my life. Going back to Chip Connolly, we can show up passionately when we feel connected, when we feel seen and heard. And for me, feeling appreciated. Right? I became vegan 2 years ago. This was really important for me. I don't always get it right. Trust, I don't always get it right. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's out of my control. Weightlifting right now is really, really low. And I love the beauty of weightlifting. It's something I picked up recently that I absolutely love, but I'm pretty low on sleep right now as well. So what's the next part? So before I go on to the next part, I know the other thing you're thinking about. 1, you're like, hey, why 8? 2, you're like, well, when it comes to desired blend, hello, I want a 10 on everything. Like, that's the perfectionist in me. If I don't have a 10, what am I actually doing here? Here's some real talk. Then you're back in the trap of this being completely unsustainable. You are putting yourself and you're setting those very unrealistic expectations again. And I'm saying, give yourself permission that this life is not going to be, these elements are not ever or all the time going to be 10s. We can't have 10s on everything. Get really honest about what you can feel satisfied with. Get really honest. You don't have to show anyone this blend. This is your blend. There's no test. This is about you. This is about you. This hour is about you. Okay? So please don't go for perfect 10s. This is not a test. So let's talk about my desired. So I did my current, I've done my desired now. You can see it. Some of them I'm spot on. I'm feeling pretty good, right? I can accept an 8. I can accept a 7 on some things, right? The only one that you will notice that I have a 10 on is sleep. That is the only one. That is what I would call a non-negotiable. And you're like, whew, well, you want a 10, you're at a 5. Like, let's go ahead and figure out what those gaps are. Yes. Now, instantly, when I do my gaps, I know exactly where my attention needs to be focused because I want to close my gaps. Look at that. I very quickly know where my gaps are and where I want to put my energy. So sleep for me is about recovery. It's about how my brain functions. It's about how I show up. Like it impacts every aspect of my life. And my friends and my family know it because I have shared this with them. So it is not, knowing it is my non-negotiable doesn't mean I always get great sleep. Right now I'm not, as you can see. But when I say, hey, I really, you know what, I would love to go have dinner with you tonight, or I'd love to stay up late and let's have a bonfire and let's hang out. They understand when I say, hey, I really need to get sleep. Because in order for me to show up for you tomorrow in the fullest way I can, I really, really, you're going to want me to get sleep. Trust. This is for you too. Right? And I'm sure some of this is resonating for you. Right? If any of this is resonating for you, definitely let me know in the chat. I mean, I know your blend is going to look different. And maybe your non-negotiable isn't sleep, but it is definitely sleep for me. Right? And feeling inspired. If you have some non-negotiables that you figured out you need a 10, I would love to see it in the chat. Absolutely. So weightlifting, it's something I got to get back into, but look how tightly sleep in my training, they align pretty closely. One impacts the other. There are some contingencies here. My nutrition impacts all of this. Some of these are hanging together, right? So if I start working on one, some others are going to get resolved as well. So now you have an opportunity to identify the gaps in your life. And the goal is, how do we close those gaps? How do you start recognizing what you need to do to bridge the gap? Because before now, maybe you didn't have the words to say, I have gaps. Or I felt like I had gaps. I was telling you, I was feeling disconnected until I labeled it. I need inspiration in my life. I need that, people inspire me, places inspire me, food inspires me, stories inspire me. I needed that, and I've been missing that. So I'm seeking that as I close that gap. And I'm figuring out my sleep, because that's like I said, a non-negotiable for me. But you too will get the opportunity now to say, hey, this is really important to me when it comes to my fulfillment. And I really have to focus on this. I have to prioritize this. I have to put my attention to it, my energy to it. Again, because this is about fulfillment. This is about that long-term satisfaction, not the hits and happiness that we have. I love those. But this is over the long term, how you show up. Right? I need autonomy both across the board. I need inspiration across the board. It isn't needing inspiration at work versus needing inspiration at home. That myth is gone, right? It isn't about balancing them anymore. It's about blending them, showing up with everything that I am, showing up vulnerably, authentically, and saying, this is what I need to feel the passion and the fulfillment that I know I can have. I know I can have. I know I deserve. Some of you really need to say that too. You deserve this. Okay. So you can close gaps. We know this. Mindset is a huge deal. Identifying some of the things that you can change is a huge deal. These are opportunities, knowing your bandwidth, knowing your strengths. When you're like, how do I close my gaps? These are some of the tools in the toolbox that can do that. And I want to pull out one specifically. It's how you affect your overall blend, right? And we're going to pull out the gratitude one at the end. But here's the deal with the blend. You now have a tool. Please don't sit on it, right? Schedule time to do it if you have not done it yet. Yes, I'm asking you to prioritize yourself again and fill out this tool. Schedule time to grapple with it. Because it might literally be the first time you've asked yourself what it is that really fills up your love tank or your bucket or your cup or whatever, however you describe it. So schedule time to do it and then share it. Print out a copy for your partner, for your coworker. Ask them to fill it out and say, hey, I would love for us to support each other in this. Put it on your fridge, right? And then design your life to support it. Choose one gap. You don't have to confront them all. Choose one and say, today I'm committed. I'm going to do one small thing that's going to address this. One small thing, one gap. That's all I'm asking. Right? If I worked out 3 times last week, I'm going to shoot for 4 this week. Right? One more time. I'm going to focus on my meals. I'm going to focus on that just one meal at a time. Because if that's what I have, that's what I have. And that is meaningful, right? It isn't about overhauling your life, but it is saying, I'm the same person at work as I am at home, because we have to get back to that humanness, that we are showing up with need states in both places that are not changing. This is an opportunity for you to discover and uncover and unearth those need states. So I did want to talk about gratitude. I can't tell you how much being here with you has filled me up, and how just so humble and grateful I am to be back here with UAB, right? This is, having a gratitude practice has absolutely changed my perspective on things. And so much so, I know that people around me have noticed it. Just shifting the way I see even things that look and feel bad and are hard, and just being like, hey, there's something in this that I know I can take. I know it's hard. I'm not avoiding the emotions there or the feelings or pushing them down. I'm honoring them. I'm feeling them to heal them, but I'm also grateful for whatever is happening, right? So this thankful appreciation for the things you have done, it's a game changer. This is part of that mindset shift. That, remember, we were talking about not feeling enough. If you wake up every morning and the first thing you tell yourself is you're not enough, I'm asking you to say, I am enough, and I am grateful. I am enough. I am enough on this day, in this moment, showing up here right now. You are enough. Shift that one piece. Be grateful for the bed you're laying in, for the kitchen you get to walk into, even the small stuff. You are in conversation with everything around you when you are in this gratitude practice, in this space of gratitude. I am grateful that we have finally, the rain has stopped and we have the sun shining in Birmingham. I'm going to take advantage. I hope you will too. Right? And you're like, well, I know we have scientists in the room. We have researchers in the room. I'm here with you. But here's what it can do. It improves our lives. It makes us more optimistic. It increases our resilience from stress. It increases our energy when we can just give thanks. And we are coming into that season. And I'm asking you to just start now. If this is your one small thing to close a gap, start now. Right? Reduces depression. It actually lowers your blood pressure, because that stress state we were talking about, that anxiety state we're in, and it connects us to something larger, right? These are all very, very important elements. And this is affecting your overall blend. I am grateful that I have this blend. I'm grateful for my gaps. And now I know where I can put some energy and attention. So here's the deal too, the quickest way to get things from your head to your heart is through your hands. So that's why I'm asking you to do the tool, establish gratitude, actually do the things and show up for yourself. You're doing it for everyone else. That is another thing I cannot pour into you enough, how instrumental UAB has been for the past year, almost 2 years. I am grateful. This community is grateful. And I want you, God, I want you to do this for yourself so you can find the fulfillment that matters to you. So that is all I have. I am definitely excited for questions. I am excited to hear from you and your feedback. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Dr. Larson or whoever we want to ask some questions, I am here for it.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton. Really an inspiring talk. I hope many in our audience took notes and will take this to heart to actually execute on the things you shared. And I appreciate both the insight as well as the passion with which you shared that with. It's really refreshing. So, Jessica, do we have notes? Do we have questions from the chat?
We do. We have some questions from the chat, and I've gotten a few questions ahead of time, so we'll go ahead and get started, okay? We've got a question in the chat. How often do you revisit the blend and modify it?
That's a really, really great question. Like I said, I get to see mine every day. I knew I was off somewhere, and that's really what had me investigating it. Like I said, I was feeling really disconnected, and I was like, hey, something's changed. Why don't I go back to this tool and just see, hey, I can reevaluate this. One of the things I would say, as you go through stages in your life, how those need states for fulfillment will change as you advance in careers, as the family dynamics you have change. What you need to feel fulfilled will absolutely change. Check in. If you're checking in with it regularly, you're going to know, okay, hey, something feels off here, or I don't have the right words to encapsulate this. The other thing I have to tell you, do not, and I know you, I could trust me, like I know me too. Do not try to make your one of your slices so broad, like nutrition, diet, exercise, everything is in one slice, like how I do the thing. No, separate them out. Don't make them so broad that they're not actionable for you. This is going to challenge you to choose the things that matter.
All right. How can you work through gaps when you're experiencing burnout and depression?
Woo! Okay. That's a tough one, actually, right? Because burnout and depression actually shows up in all elements of your blend. Obviously, my background coming onto here, and I would say, hey, there's opportunities for professional support there. But there are opportunities for you to chip away at some small things, right? Focusing on those small elements. So when you're battling with something like depression and burnout, these are very large states. And I would say professional help is always really, really good. But taking time, showing yourself some grace on your blend is really, really important. But maybe a part of your element, maybe one of your blend elements becomes your mindset and your mental health. Right? So maybe you do have to shift some things, but then we also want to examine what it is that's fueling that. Because is your lack of fulfillment on these things really fueling that mindset and that mental health concern?
All right, we got another question. I find it hard to wrap my head around blending life and work.
Oh.
Can compartmentalizing be a good thing and healthy for boundaries?
Ooh, well, see, I would say, look, if I have healthy boundaries at home, I should have healthy boundaries at work, right? So I show up as the same person, and that's this concept of blend. When you're getting back to the need states, me saying, hey, I only really actually feel fulfilled when I'm feeling appreciated at home. Hi, I definitely need to feel appreciated then at work too, right? These things matter. Compartmentalization, I think, is really important. If you genuinely are battling something that you're like, look, I don't want to bleed over into I don't want to bleed on people that didn't cut me. I've heard that, right? Like when you're like, hey, do I talk to my partner about these things, or my husband or my wife? And how can I have support there? Let's get down to the crux of it. You being effective in your role at work might be one of your blend, right? You being an effective leader, but you're not just a leader at work. You're a leader in your home or your church or your organizations that you're in, your professional and social organizations. What I'm saying is challenge yourself to realize where the commonalities are, that the bifurcation isn't as exact as what we've been sold when it comes to a myth.
What communication tactics would you recommend for communicating with others what your non-negotiables are when they might not understand you need sleep? It's different than saying I want it, I need it.
Yeah. So it is, look, it's capital B boundaries. If I'm being completely honest, to carry over from the last question, it is absolutely one of those things where I stand very firm and confident in my decisions, right? And I say, hey, this is my non-negotiable. I have to go to sleep. I was actually traveling and hadn't seen friends in a really long time. They're like, hey, we should stay up after dinner. Let's do after dinner drinks. Let's do all the things. And I'm like, I would love that, except I need sleep. And I really want you to hear my heart on this. It isn't personal. This is just something that helps me show up effectively for you tomorrow when we re-engage at this conference. So this is really important to me. Is it going to burn a little bit at times? Are people going to take it personal? Absolutely. But having that conversation, being willing to stand in your authenticity, being willing to stand for what you need, that's the important part of this. Using your voice.
And how do you begin the process of filling your gaps? Should I start with the biggest gap? Should I start with the one that's the most obtainable? What would be your thoughts on picking one to start with?
Ooh, that's a really good question, huh? And I feel like it's a bit personal. So just like I told you when I was doing my blend and realized where my gaps were, I realized there was one that was super related to the others, right? My performance in showing up to weight train or showing up to work out was really influenced by sleep and nutrition. So for me, if I could start working on sleep and then nutrition, the other one should come pretty naturally. But it is to say, choosing the one that you feel like is the most important for you in the moment. And that's going to change. That's going to change over time, just like your blend is going to change over time. But there is no hard and fast. You should definitely choose the biggest gap always. There's a lot of power in knowing the gap exists and it is that large. So the burn you're feeling, that tension, the anxiety you're feeling, you now can point to that and say, okay, I am realizing a bit more why I feel the way I feel. Or potentially why burnout's coming, or potentially why I'm feeling depressed because I am not I'm not fulfilled. Right. So I don't think there is a hard and fast. It's to say, what are the resources and bandwidth that you have now, and show yourself grace. Do not get into the trap of thinking I have a 5 for a gap or a 6 for a gap. You need to say, and then I have to do it now. I have to tackle all of it, all 6 points right now. Right. No. Hey, I want to chip away at it slowly. Give yourself some grace. We are in a weird time. And if I've learned anything, it is to honor myself and my body, listen to my body, like cut myself some slack, stop with the I'm not enough. Like working on our mindset is one thing. The gratitude practice is one thing that you can do that takes very little energy, right? To start closing gaps.
All right, we got another question. How does this relate to the DISC assessment with the natural state and the adapted state?
Honestly, I have not looked at the DISC in a very, very long time. So I would absolutely, now I want to, as a curious person, naturally, I want to. And if I can come back with an answer, I would love that. But yeah, I haven't actually looked at the DISC in a super, super long time. I haven't had an organization want me to take one in a long time. Since grad school, probably. Thanks, UAB. Woo!
How do you manage your blend with your partner's blend? Can you discuss how you manage what to work on, what not to work on, and how to communicate that with your partner?
Okay, I love this question because it's your partner, it's your family, it's your friends, but particularly in an intimate setting, right? The goal would be for you both first to fill out your blend. Where do you have some overlap? Where do you not, right? And where are the gaps? So there is a bit of compromise that comes in that. So if you're like, hey, I have a major gap on time alone, I really need some time alone. Like we're on top of it. We've been doing the working from home thing. We've been doing the whatever. We have to get intentional about that. And hopefully your blend serves as that starting point for the discussion. And it isn't you coming and saying, look, I did this blend and I got this thing. It's like, hey, I want to do this with you. This is important for us because you deserve fulfillment too. I deserve fulfillment. How can we support each other? Hey, how about I do, if you give me one night of time alone, I'm going to support you on your need for hiking or that, whatever it is, right? I want to help you do a thing. So there's an opportunity for collaboration for you to become your own hype people and say, man, look, you're working on that gap, right? I love that. I am so cool. Like I get really excited when people do come up to me and say, hey, you're not going to believe, like, I've been crushing on my gaps. I want to support you. And I will ask my teams that, the people in my life, hey, where are your gaps at right now? Is there anything I can do to support you? Because I want to normalize it for them asking me the same.
Someone asked if there was a way to access the template you showed with your blend. Would you be able to share that with us after the
Oh,
talk?
absolutely. Absolutely.
In addition to how you can set it with your personal life, could you discuss how to set this with your boss and boundaries and work within a team of a blend?
I love that you asked this question because I have shown you the individual version of a blend. There is a team version of this same tool. So this is something that you and your team would fill out together to know what are our need states as a team and are we effectively meeting them? So that is I can definitely forward that over so you can see it on a team level. And I would love to come back and talk to anyone who wants to grapple with that with their teams.
Thank you. Let's see, what tools would you recommend for those starting to work on their blend, having trouble getting it down to 8? What kinds of tactics would you recommend for that person that just can't seem to cull it down?
I mean, the goal is 8. The goal is 8. Like there's a reason we have to have a hard stop, right? Otherwise this would be infinite. And I was definitely talking to those people who are like going to try to cram a bunch into one element. Don't do it. Get honest with yourself. Get really honest with yourself about what matters. Right. And then if you're like, well, like I said, maybe there's something sitting at so let me give you my train of thought on the inspiration piece. I thought, well, maybe it's socializing. Maybe it's hanging out with friends. Maybe it's just trying something new. Maybe it's right. So all of those together are where I was circling around. And at the core of it, like the inside of it, when I really peeled back, what do all these things mean? Why are these things the things I'm really interested or I'm missing right now? It was inspiration. I think there's an opportunity for you to just drill down, like, why are these things hanging together? What's at the core of it? Get to that need state.
This is kind of rather a long question, but it's a good question. How would you go about addressing your blend if one item is work flexibility for an engaging environment, especially now that you've experienced it with workforce changes due to COVID? It's not really something that I would have control over as an employee necessarily, but it's something that's important to my blend. So how would I go about managing something that I can't fully control?
That's a really, I do have a response for this, but it's a tough one. Like if I would say outside of this setting in organizations where I've seen this, it is deciding whether or not you're in alignment with where you're supposed to be, if this matters to you, right? So in organizations, I've seen very high performing people decide they've gotten to the top of the mountain and they're miserable. And it's them saying, hey, if I really want to pursue fulfillment, I have to make some hard choices. So without saying, hey, if that's important to you, you might have to make hard choices. That is part of fulfillment. We can't denying it's going to be really, really hard.
And let's say beyond the blend template, is this a model based on a book or other resources that we could look up on our own time to implement within our own areas? I
can absolutely send you some social psychological research that has really supported some of this stuff. But again, McDonald Graham is really the one who has led and they're local, which I will reinforce as well. These are the ones who are pioneering this in our city. So I definitely will point to them for more resources and make sure you have access to all of that in a follow-up, hopefully.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sutton and Dr. Vickers. We're coming up to close to time. If you want to make some closing remarks.
Yeah, I too, again, want to thank you, Lindsay. Dr. Sutton, it's been outstanding. I took several pages of notes. Many times my life is a blur and a bleed, not a blend. And I think the information you shared was really impactful and powerful. Most of all, I hope our community took it to heart. There are a number of people who are listening. We certainly can and will be a better organization and perform at greater levels. But most importantly, this conversation will help our people, which is in large part of the purpose for doing it. So thank you for being transparent, honest, and open. Thank you for preparing. And thank you for your enthusiasm for coming back home to share your life experience. So again, very much appreciated. We've been blessed by it, and hopefully many have some things practically to take home to apply.
Thank you so much for having me. I I would love to be back anytime. And I want to be a resource for all of the UAB community. Please find me on LinkedIn. Please reach out. I would love to connect.
Thank you again.
Thanks,
Jessica. Thank you, Paige. Thanks, Jean Ann.